Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be putting in a Grimmspeed Cold Air Intake on my 2011 Subaru WRX. So what we're going to be doing today is going through town and doing a couple pulls, trying to see what the stock air intake sounds like compared to the Grimmspeed one. From inside the cabin, I don't have any cameras to put on the outside, but it should be what you hear as a driver inside the cabin. I've been driving this car for almost 2 years now, so I'm pretty used to what it sounds like. So I can't hear anything. But when we get the side-by-side of the videos, I think it'll be some, I don't know, I think there'll be a noticeable difference. At least sound-wise. I'm not expecting any power difference from a cold air intake, but we'll find out. So let's go do some pulls. All right, we're gonna do our first little pull here. We got those new brakes on because we're in town doing this. So there's an airlift sticker on this Jeep. Yeah, there it is. I wonder if it's on airlift. What do you think? Leave a comment below. If he is, I'm jealous, but I don't know. Here's a little pull. All right, so we opened the box and we're gonna have inside our intake tube. I went with red. The options were red and black. I got the high flow filter. Here's our hose connector with the clamps on it. We're gonna have our heat shield, 2 license plate covers, 2 stickers. It comes with 3 rubber sealing strips for the heat shield. And then we're gonna have our little bit of hardware in here, 2 screws and a grommet for the MAF sensor. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is get rid of the old air intake. So first thing we're gonna do is pull these 2 pins here. I use a flathead screwdriver to just kind of pop those up. And then once you get these 2 out, you should just be able to wiggle this a little bit and it'll come right out. We're not gonna reuse the snorkel piece here, so you can just throw this on the side. The next thing we're gonna do is unplug the MAF sensor here, and you just push down on this clip to pull it out. And it should come out pretty smooth. You don't want to be yanking this thing out. It's electrical, so it should just come undone nice and smoothly like that. And we're gonna set it off to the side, pinched in between something so it doesn't fall down. Then I'm gonna break these loose here and take this part off with a regular, just Phillips head screwdriver. So I don't have to hold the box in my hand when I'm trying to unscrew that. So we're gonna start with this. So after you get your 2 screws off of this MAF, you're just gonna pull up and out because it's got this long little stem piece to it. And we don't need to keep the hardware, but we will keep the MAF itself on the side. After you have the MAF out, we're gonna find these 2 hose clamps here, and we're gonna take our Phillips head screwdriver and loosen these clamps up. Okay, after you loosen both the hose clamps, then you're going to remove this piping here in the center. All right, so I loosened both these hose clamps, and the next thing I'm going to do is look at the air box. There is I've already removed it, but there's a 10mm bolt right here, and then there's also one looking down at the air box. It is down right here. You're gonna need an extender to reach that one, and this one's in kind of a tight space, but they're both doable. Check this out. So I have my socket here, and I broke my old one, so I have an extra extender. So trying to reach this thing down here, we're going double extendo on this thing. Double extendo, and it just has a nice little window right here to move it piece by piece. It's hard to do with one hand, but yeah, you got a nice little window down there to double extendo it. So after we've removed those 2 bolts and we have both these clamps loosened, we should just be able to pull it right off and remove the airbox. Might take a little muscling, but you should be able to pull it right out. All right, so we got this out, and if you look on this backside piece, there's this clip here. It was kind of a bitch pulling it out, but that's because I didn't notice this piece was attached right here. It sat in here like this. You know, if you can picture it running out. Here's the airbox, here's the tube. It was clipped down here where I couldn't see, so I was yanking on it, and I just couldn't get that piece out. But once I was able to just gently move that out of that plastic piece, it came right off. I just took a little bit of prying on the side over here with the screwdriver, but it was came out pretty easy. Now we're ready to put parts back on. So over here on the passenger side of the airbox, there's going to be 2 10mm bolts holding on this little metal clip. We're just going to take those off because we're not going to be reusing those putting in the new intake. So we can just take those 2 off and get it out of the way. All right, this was the piece that was over there, and we have it taken off now. If you look, it was right there. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our heat shield and our rubber seals, and we're gonna run them along the outside of the heat shield right on these areas here. And if you look and you lay these rubber seals out, there's 3 different lengths. So you're gonna start with the long one, and by the Grimmspeed sticker, you're gonna take it along here, and it's gonna go over the little divot here. This divot here, you open your bag and you're gonna cut this little black rubber circle and stick it in there. I think it's called a grommet. And you're gonna stick it in there because this is where your MAF sensor is gonna go, and you don't want that rubbing on the metal and cutting it. Then the second longest piece is gonna go on this other side, and the shortest piece is gonna go in the circle. These are kind of a pain to get on nicely, so it takes a little bit. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to put this connector here, the coupler. We're gonna take the small side and we're gonna stick it on over here where we removed the old one. And we're gonna force that on there and tighten it down with a flathead screwdriver, just right on there. This is the grommet where we put earlier. If you don't do this part now, it's gonna be very hard later. So we cut this little circle piece just right there so we could put it in here, and we can run the MAF cord up through this little hole and seal it off once it's all put in there. So you definitely want to do that now if you haven't yet. And then we're going to put the filter and the hose in here and line the airbox up. These 2 holes are going where we took that silver piece off in the corner here earlier. It's going to sit down in here like this when it's all finished. So it's a little tight, but you're going to squeeze it in there. Air intake goes in basically like this. So we're gonna try to get the air intake through the back of the heat shield, and we're gonna try to set it down into place real quick. All right, so putting the filter on the air intake piping, you're gonna wanna mark about 1 inch off of the top on the MAF side of the piping. That's where Grimmspeed recommends. That's just the best length, because if you put the filter on too far, it's not going to work as good as it should. So here's where we put this, and just about 1 inch there, and we're going to tighten it up, and then we're going to move on to the next part. I almost forgot. Now that we have this stuck in here, we're going to take our old MAF sensor, and it's directional, so it's going to be really hard to mess it up. You line the holes up, and we're going to put a little bit of oil on here to lubricate it. We're going to stick this piece on and screw it back in with the new hardware we got. All right, so we got everything hooked up, and this is what we're working with here. One of the hardest things to do was plugging the MAF sensor into where the sensor connects, and then dropping. You'd have to almost drop this piece all the way down into the wheel well to be able to push the heat shield down and then to hook into its divots. And then once you had the MAF sensor connected and then the heat shield connected, then you could just pull the piping up through this hole and connect it to the coupler here. And that was the easiest way to do it. I dropped a couple pieces in there during it, so it took me a while to fish it out, and it took me a while to figure out that that probably was the easiest order. Because trying to just fit the giant thing in that little hole, maneuvering like this, was a pain. So keeping the piping in the heat shield drop everything down and then connect it and pull it back up. And oh my God, it was a pain. But we got it all on here, and we're gonna take it out, see if there's a check engine light, and see if we can hear any differences during our test drive. All right, well, it is the next day. I'm on my way to the gym. I got the intake in last night, and I just kind of backed it out of the garage and let it sit overnight. So we're going for the first drive now, and we're gonna see if we can hear any differences on our way to the gym. All right, so I just made my first turn and did my first little pull, and hopefully you can hear this, because I can hear it. It is definitely different. Let's see. That's what I'm talking about, baby! It's definitely not any faster, dude, but that shit sounds fucking cool, bro. Just the intake? I don't even know. Like, hopefully that's what it's supposed to sound like. Immediately, as soon as you press on the gas, that shit's fucking... I had no idea it was gonna be like that. I was expecting like a little bit, but you definitely have to hear that from inside on the camera right now. That has to be heard. That stuff is so loud and it sounds so good. Like, first gear going 10 miles an hour even makes a noise. Worth it. It was worth the money. Worth the money. Worth me smashing my knuckles. Worth me dropping the little bolts down into my fucking splash guard, so I had to take that thing off and find it in the middle of the night. It was worth it. I can pretend it's faster. Sounds faster. Probably not, but definitely sounds faster. This is awesome. All right. After putting this part on, my gas mileage is definitely going way down, because every time I hit the gas, it's just... That's what I'm talking about, dude. So I've had lots of cars with intakes on them before. This is the first one I've put in myself. And what I've noticed is I can definitely hear it a lot more. Maybe that's because I was used to driving the car with no air intake, and now I have the air intake so I can hear it better and I notice it. But it definitely seems a lot louder than any other car I've had before. What made me pick Grimmspeed between like a Cobb one or an AEM or anything else is, honestly, the Grimmspeed just sounded cool. Sounded like a cooler name. Thought the sticker would look nicer. And I've heard good things about them, but mainly Grimmspeed just had the coolest name, and that's what I went with. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video. It was pretty easy to install compared to the brakes and rotors, and definitely a DIY thing to do, and it definitely adds some miles per gallon here. So I'd highly recommend getting air intake on your WRX. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.